I'm so delighted to be here today. I love the law school. Like Carolina, going to law school was an important choice. In fact, for me, it was the most important decision that I have ever made. Like my classmates, I received a world-class education, made lifelong friends, and had more freedom and flexibility than my peers who graduated from pricier schools with heavy student loan burdens. But this law school benefited me in unique ways. My husband, Todd, and I met in a first-year study group. We married in our second year and welcomed our first of 4 children shortly after graduation. Each job I've had since graduating stems from my BYU degree. Then Dean Jim Rasband connected me with Judge Wallace for my clerkship. A BYU alum opened the door for me at Cooley, and a recruiter at Qualtrics sourcing for my position was looking for people with Utah ties who would be willing to relocate to Provo on short notice. Attending this law school gave me my family, job, and home. I hope my experience doesn't increase your anxiety about your decision. I'll get to that later. It shouldn't, but I do want to give credit where credit is due. If you do choose to attend law school, no matter where you go, on your first day, you will likely be introduced to a foundational legal concept, precedent. In the legal system, precedent means that a principle or rule established in a legal case will be binding on or persuasive to future cases with similar issues or facts. Precedents facilitate stability and predictability in our legal, political, and economic systems. In the corporate world where I practice, businesses rely on precedent to know whether their transactions will be enforced and whether their conduct might be penalized. In other civil and criminal contexts, precedent encourages fairness by aiming to treat similarly situated people similarly. In our personal lives, we also look to precedent for guidance. When facing an unfamiliar situation, we may study what others in similar circumstances have done and what their outcomes were to inform and optimize our own response. Maybe that's part of why you're here today. I have been to many events like this one, looking for an example of how to be a woman of faith with a successful career and a thriving family. Growing up in Utah County in the 80s and 90s, I did not know any women who worked outside of the home other than school teachers. By the time I started law school, I knew a few, but most were my professors, and I still did not know any women lawyers that I could talk to about being a woman in law, much less balancing that with career and family and other commitments. Fortunately, today women, including women of faith, are entering the legal profession in droves. Technology also helps us connect with a wider range of women than ever. And over the years, I found many excellent support groups and mentors, male and female, both online and in person. But I can tell you this, after years of searching and attending events like this and meeting hundreds of other lawyers and mothers and professionals, I have never found that person whose life could serve as a precedent for my own. Not one person with my same background, interests, skills, family situation, and job. She's not out there. She's me. I have learned, as Glennon Doyle wrote in her book, Untamed, every life is an unprecedented experiment. This life is mine alone. So I have stopped asking people for directions to a place they've never been. There's no map. We are all pioneers. Realizing that our life is unmapped and unprecedented is daunting, but even courts have to move beyond precedent to create progress. If courts always followed precedent, Linda Brown could never have successfully challenged racially segregated schools. And if women's lives always followed precedent, 2001 would not see us celebrating our first Madam Vice President or this law school's first predominantly female graduating class. So today I won't give you any specific directions for your own life. I've never lived it, but I want to share 3 navigational instruments that might help you on your own unmapped path. Principle number 1, identify your North Star. Thousands of years before your journey began, explorers relied on stars to navigate new territory. In 800 BC, Homer's archetypal traveler Odysseus never closed his eyes but kept them fixed on the Pleiades as he sailed across the Mediterranean. Around the same time, Polynesian seafarers used celestial navigation to spread across the South Pacific. Identifying your personal guiding stars can orient you to your path and enlighten you during difficult decisions. Your star may be a particular job or position you want to hold someday or something you want to accomplish. It may be a general principle or value that you want to adhere to, or maybe a vision of the kind of person you want to be. One of my personal guiding stars is a commitment to God and following divine direction. I am not perfect at this, but in most of my big decisions, I have tried to do as Nephi counseled, to pray unto the Father in the name of Christ, that he will consecrate my performance, that my performance may be for the welfare of my soul. Inviting divinity into my decision-making first prompted me to consider applying to law school, even though I had spent most of my college years preparing for history PhD programs. It also ultimately led me to BYU Law School. As you've already heard, choosing BYU was the single most important decision I've ever made. But, and I can only confess this because I did end up choosing BYU. It was not the school I planned on attending. I'd been admitted to my dream school on the East Coast, and everyone, including myself, assumed I would enroll there. But because I was committed to discover and carry out God's will for me, I was open to the unexpected answer I got when praying over my decision. At the time, trusting God and declining my dream school felt like a sacrifice, but that so called sacrifice has been my greatest blessing. As the Apostle Paul wrote, my eye hadn't seen, my ear hadn't heard, and my heart couldn't even imagine what God had prepared for me. One critical caveat here, especially for those of you who may be concerned that you haven't received clear direction about whether and where to attend law school. For me, for some reason, whether and where to attend law school really, really mattered. And perhaps for that reason, I got an unmistakably clear answer. Most of my decisions have not been like that. I don't view God as having a divine, detailed blueprint that we are capable of spoiling if we step off of some predetermined path, but rather as a co-creator we work with as we answer the question, what is it you plan to do with your one wild and precious life? The story of the brother of Jared from the Book of Mormon illustrates this beautifully. Sometimes God tells us exactly how to build the boat to get from point A to point B, but perhaps more often God leaves us to our own devices and helps us make it work, even if all we muster is a pile of rocks. I'll talk a bit more about this later, but I didn't want to leave anyone in a panic because she didn't receive an angelic visitation telling her to go to law school. Another lodestar for me is a commitment to my family. A family and a career is not an either or proposition, but when deciding between career options and other activities that take up my time, I try to select those that I hope will optimize family happiness. Sometimes this has meant passing on professional opportunities. As a law school student, and for the first several years of my career, I dreamed of going into academics. Although I worked toward transitioning to an academic path, the timing and circumstances never seemed right for my family. During the time in my career that I should have been pursuing fellowships or another advanced degree or original research, I had 3 babies in 3 years. It just didn't make sense for me to uproot my family for a fellowship or a postgraduate program with no maternity leave, limited benefits, a fraction of my law firm pay, and likely several years of hopping around before landing a tenure track position. Instead, I enjoyed my firm's generous maternity leave, a flexible schedule that, while admittedly stressful and unpredictable, allowed me to juggle work and young children, and a salary that provided a comfortable living in a neighborhood we'd grown to love. Ironically, the large law firm job that many people will assume will wreck a person's family life was a surprisingly supportive place for me to build mine. While I certainly had my what might have been and woe is me moments as I mourned a career dream that wasn't to be, my decision to stay at that firm instead of switching career paths led me to the position that I have today, an incredibly rewarding job that I never could have predicted or prepared for. In How Will You Measure Your Life, the late Clay Christensen wrote that if the decisions you make about where to invest your blood, sweat, and tears are not consistent with the person you aspire to be, you will never become that person. Focusing on guiding stars does not mean that you won't face personal or professional setbacks, but it will inspire decisions that reflect your deepest values so that you become the kind of person you want to become. As Lin-Manuel Miranda sings about the intrepid seafarers who kept their eyes fixed on the stars, at night we name every star, we know where we are, we know who we are. Guiding principle number 2, make friends with uncertainty, your traveling companion. Stars are glittering guides, but they won't illuminate our entire path or spare us from the uncertainty we feel when navigating uncharted territory. Even Nephi, on an assignment straight from God, had to proceed step by step, not knowing beforehand the things which he should do. Sometimes uncertainty bubbles up as we set down an unprecedented path and don't know what's coming next. Other times it erupts when a goal we once had no longer seems right, or when we've tried and failed at something and we don't know how to recover or what to do next. And all too often, uncertainty erodes our own self-confidence. So how can we live with and even make friends with this traveling companion? I imagine we have all dealt with the uncertainty and fear we feel when we cannot predict what our path holds. When I feel stuck or confused, I remember an analogy that President Hinckley shared in 2002. It comforted and inspired me when I was upending a lot of my existing life plans. Recounting his days working for a railroad whose tracks threaded the passes through the western mountain ranges, he described, "It was in the days where there were steam locomotives. Those great monsters of the rails were huge and fast and dangerous. I often wondered how the engineer dared the long journey through the night. Then I came to realize that it was not one long journey, but rather a constant continuation of a short journey. The engine had a powerful headlight that made bright the way for a distance of 400 to 500 yards. The engineer saw only that distance, and that was enough, because it was constantly before him all through the night and into the dawn of the new day. And so it is with our eternal journey. We take one step at a time. In doing so, we reach toward the unknown, but faith lights the way." Sometimes, like that engineer, all we can do is press forward with a perfect brightness of hope and trust that God will be a lamp unto our feet and a light unto our path. Even if that lamplight only gets us through a few steps at a time, at least it will help us move beyond that unending analysis paralysis that so often accompanies uncertainty. But sometimes we aren't just uncertain about what's coming next on the track. Sometimes we feel like the locomotive has gone completely off the rails. What do we do when our plans don't pan out, or life brings unanticipated challenges? How can we be still and still moving? My husband and I graduated law school on the cusp of the 2008 financial crisis. That was a challenging time for many lawyers who found themselves unemployed after law firms froze hiring and conducted layoffs. I was fortunate to land a job at Cooley, but my husband could not find full-time work. While we were grateful for my employment, it was never our plan for me to be our family's sole financial support. I hadn't even wanted to work full-time. And we definitely didn't expect my husband to be a stay-at-home dad. It was isolating and overwhelming for both of us. While I eventually grew to love my practice at Cooley, and our atypical family arrangement has worked really well for us, it was a rough few years at first. I felt like we were totally off track from our plans, impatiently trudging along until my husband could find a job, and then we could get back to living our real life. I was wrong. As many religious and wisdom teachers teach, our real life, even if it's not our ideal life, is right here, right now. There's no other better life that's lying in wait until some past problem resolves or future event materializes. President Thomas S. Monson frequently taught us to learn from the past, prepare for the future, live in the present. Eckhart Tolle put it most bluntly: most people treat the present moment as if it were an obstacle that they need to overcome. Since the present moment is life itself, this is an insane way to live. I finally started to recover from this insane way of living as though my life was an obstacle once my third child was born. I had really struggled returning to work after the birth of my second child, and I wanted things to go better this time. In considering how I could ease the transition, I felt prompted to start a gratitude journal the first day that I went back to work. This daily gratitude practice did not change my challenging circumstances. If anything, my degree of difficulty increased because I now have 3 young children instead of 2. But my gratitude practice changed the way I experienced those circumstances, and so changed my life. Gratitude opened my eyes to many wonders and kindnesses that I experienced every day, and to the hand of a God I had felt a bit abandoned by in the wake of my perceived life derailment. I realized I had not been abandoned at all. God was everywhere in my life if I looked for it. Elder Uchtdorf taught this principle beautifully, referring to the golden tickets from Roald Dahl's novel Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. So many people today are waiting for their own golden ticket, the ticket they believe holds the key to the happiness they have always dreamed about. For some, the golden ticket may be a perfect marriage. For others, a magazine cover home, or perhaps freedom from stress or worry. There's nothing wrong with righteous yearnings. We hope and seek after things that are virtuous, lovely, or of good report or praiseworthy. The problem comes when we put our happiness on hold as we wait for some future event, our golden ticket, to appear. Never stop hoping all those righteous desires of your heart, but don't close your eyes and hearts to the simple and elegant beauties of each day's ordinary moments that make up a rich, well-lived life. The happiest people I know are not those who find their golden ticket. They are those who, while in pursuit of worthy goals, discover and treasure the beauty and sweetness of everyday moments. They are those who, thread by daily thread, weave a tapestry of gratitude and wonder throughout their lives. These are they who are truly happy. Many of you are in a building or planning phase of life. These phases can be exciting but challenging. And sometimes we are tempted to believe that happiness is just around the corner once we finish the semester, or survive the LSAT, or get accepted to law school, or finally start down a career path, or attain a certain golden ticket position, or income, or status. But wisdom, experience, and even science teach us that happiness is not something that we will find when we reach our goals or attain some future state. I know people who've had success beyond their wildest imagination, who have won multiple golden tickets, but who are no happier than they were when that success was a pipe dream. Those who were happy while working towards their goals were happy once they reached them. Those who were insecure and unsatisfied remain unsatisfied even after achieving long-awaited dreams. It is our attitude about our circumstances and not our circumstances that define our happiness. The most powerful way I have found to manage uncertainty and heartache that we will all face is to stop dwelling on past disappointments or worry about what the future holds, and instead attend to the only real life I have, the one that is unfolding before my eyes. This last source of uncertainty I mentioned is uncertainty about ourselves, which I want to address in my final guiding principle, number 3. Trust your captain, you. Trust your ability to meet the challenges of unfamiliar territory, and trust your judgment and intuition as you make your own navigational decisions. One major roadblock I have faced in my life and career is a lack of confidence in my abilities, no matter how stellar my previous track record might have been. Women in particular suffer from this confidence gap. It is challenging to close, but I want to share one approach that has been particularly helpful to me. For most of my life, I gravitated towards things that I knew based on previous experience I would be good at, and I avoided things where success was uncertain, or worse yet, failure likely. In my work, because I had a lot of practice and positive feedback, writing briefs during law school and during my clerkship, I was tapped to do a lot of brief writing as a junior associate. That provided many professional opportunities and unusually broad exposure to different practice areas and attorneys. And I definitely recommend that you learn about and leverage your strengths as I did. But in most careers, we reach a point where we have to expand our skill set and learn to do things that might not come naturally for us. At least at Cooley, I could not make partner just writing briefs, so I needed to develop this full skill set of a litigator. That was scary. I didn't know if I'd be good at or enjoy doing things like taking a deposition or managing a complex discovery process. For a while, I even tried unsuccessfully to find a way to stick only to brief writing. At the same time, something small but significant happened in my personal life. After the birth of my third child, in addition to being prompted to start a gratitude journal, I also felt prompted to start running, even though I've always been a really terrible athlete. Given my inclination to stick to activities I was pretty good at, I had never spent much time on physical fitness. But I knew I needed to do this. I needed to get over the embarrassment that observers might think I looked slow and awkward, or that several senior citizens would pass me in my first ever 5K, which is a true story. And while I never became any good at running, I improved a ton, but that meant from going from really slow for short distances to really slow for longer distances. Running enriched my life. It improved my mental and physical health. It opened the doors to meaningful friendships. It gave me a fun way to explore new places. I learned that I didn't have to be great at something or have innate talent to learn from, enjoy, and improve at it. That lesson gave me the courage to tackle new challenges in other areas, including work. I sought out new professional opportunities and learned that I enjoyed and was good at aspects of legal practice beyond brief writing. I discovered I loved working with technology companies, and while an earlier version of me would have shied away from the industry because I had no tech background, I dove in and focused on building skills that mattered most to that industry: intellectual property, privacy, licensing, and generally learning about their businesses. And that is how I wound up where I am today. Qualtrics wasn't looking for a brief writer. I don't write briefs anymore. They were looking for a well-rounded technology lawyer. I never would have become that without venturing into new professional territory. I should add that I did try some things along the way that didn't work out. And I put my heart, soul, and a significant amount of effort into exploring and sometimes applying for jobs that I didn't get. So my point is not that taking risks always works out. Some of mine did, and some of mine did not. My point is a more fundamental lesson about confidence that I learned along the way. True confidence isn't believing that you'll succeed at a task. True confidence is knowing that whether or not you succeed by external measures, you are no more or less valuable as a human soul, and you will be okay. That kind of confidence empowers us to try new things without any guarantee of success. As Brene Brown teaches about vulnerability, it is not about winning, it is not about losing. It is having the courage to show up when you can't control the outcome. No vulnerability, no creativity. No tolerance for failure, no innovation. As I learned in my undistinguished running career, true confidence is knowing that running the race is worth it, even if you lose. But there's one more fundamental roadblock I've faced: doubt. Doubt not just in my ability to achieve a goal, but doubts about whether I'm allowed to aim for it in the first place. Sometimes cultural and social pressures seem to tell me that my goals aren't goals that people like me should have, and that something in me is broken for wanting them. As I've reflected on my search for other women attorneys at events like these, I've realized that I was looking for more than a guide to show me how to live my life. I was looking for permission to live the life I felt called to live. If I could find a happy, successful lawyer who was still a good mom and contributed at church and community, then I could give myself permission to do the same thing. If I could find enough quotes from religious leaders that said it was okay to pursue an education and work outside the home, even if it wasn't a financial necessity, then I could give myself permission to pursue an advanced education and career, whether or not some disaster in my life required me to work. If I could get clear direction from God telling me to attend law school or to pursue a particular professional path, then I didn't need to worry that doing so would be misguided. What I'm trying to remember and to remind you is that no other woman, friend, neighbor, teacher, family member, church leader, advisor, mentor, no one has ever lived your life. You are the foremost authority in your own life. While I treasure wise and inspired counsel from each of those sources, please remember that you don't need anyone's permission to think what you think, feel how you feel, or be who you are. Your creator made you in your divine mother's own image, blessed you, and called you good. Who is to say that you didn't inherit from her the very spark that inspires your unprecedented aspirations? Sometimes trusting God means taking a step you didn't think you wanted to take. Many times, trusting God means trusting the divinity within yourself that is calling you to seek after good things. I think this is part of what the poet Carolyn Pearson conveys in her revelatory work, Power. She wrote, when she learned that she didn't have to plug into someone or something like a toaster into a wall, when she learned that she was a windmill and had only to raise her arms to catch the universal whisper and turn, turn, turn. She moved, oh, she moved, and her dance was a marvel. Today, I've compared life to a journey. Hopefully, the navigational instruments I've shared will help you on yours. Perhaps your life will look more like a wild dance than an unbroken journey. But however you choose to move through life, it will be unprecedented. And because of that, it will be a marvel. Thank you.